Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. This episode is a previous recording of our live Ask a Professional Scrum Trainer series, where a live audience asks questions of professional Scrum trainers. We hope you enjoy this episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you all of you for joining us today. Welcome to today's Ask a Professional Scrum Trainer session. I'm Lindsay Valesina with Scrum.org. I will be your moderator today, and today I have two PSTs with me. I have Joanna Plaskonka and Magdalena Kucharska. So welcome, and both of these ladies are based in Poland. So just some very quick guidelines here. Your microphone will be muted throughout the session. However, this is a Q&A session. We want you to ask your questions. So please enter your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom right of your screen. That is where you'll enter all of your questions. If you have technical questions, please utilize the chat. I ask that you do not use the chat for any of your questions for Magda and Joanna. So please utilize that chat window. This session is being recorded. So a recording will be made available via podcast within 24 hours. So please keep an eye out for that. You will get an email. And let's get started here. So very quickly, who is Scrum.org? We are the home of Scrum. We were founded by Ken Schwaber in 2009. Our mission is to help people and teams solve complex problems. We offer training, certification, and ongoing learning for professional Scrum. This webinar is just one of those pieces of ongoing learning that we have. Feel free to check out all the free resources on our website. And with that, I will hand it over to Magda and Joanna to introduce themselves and get us started.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Magda Kucharska. As Lindsay said, I'm currently based in Poland. I've been a PST for less than a year for now. And previously, I've been working for more than 10 years in different companies, various environments like banking, gambling, IT, engineering, aviation. So a lot of different background that I hope that will come in hand in today's answering your questions.
Thank you. So my name is Joanna. You probably know that. I'm located in Poland too. And I've been a PST for around 2 years right now. My background is in engineering. I used to be a software configuration management engineer. And I quickly started in my professional career learning about Scrum, Agile, how to take the best out of it. So majority of my experience is related to be a Scrum Master, coach, supporter for the whole organization in different industries. So banking, software houses, some companies creating software as a service. I even worked in a robotic startup, which, fun fact, is related to my educational background because I'm an engineer. I'm a robotic and control engineering expert. It's good that you are here with us, so I guess it's high time for your questions.
Yes. So thank you both for that quick intro. So for those of you who have just joined, please utilize the Q&A at the bottom of your screen to enter your questions. I am going to stop sharing. And let's see here. So, all right. So this question here, can developers remove and replace sprint backlog items themselves during the sprint? Joanna, want to take this one?
Yes, sure. That's a very good question. So I guess that when you are using the term item, you mean product backlog items, right? So in general,
yes, I believe so.
In general, sprint backlog is not a commitment in Scrum as a whole. It's our forecast. What we are going to do is our plan, let's say short-term plan, how to create a valuable product. So if the developers do not change the sprint goal and they are still contributing to the goal, it's okay to change product backlog items. However, when it comes to transparency, which is one of Scrum pillars, I think it's good to have a conversation with product owner when it comes to changes on product backlog item level. And I believe that it's a matter of a collaboration with the team. If you show the product owner like this is the best what we can do, I strongly believe that they will agree on that.
What I can add is also that usually when you want to add things to the sprint backlog, there's a question of what should I take out of it, right? Because there's a certain amount of things we are able to do during the sprint. So it's more of a conversation regarding the sprint goal.
Okay, and then a follow-up question that came in here. So then who decides to release the increment?
Who decides to release the increment? Well, it's a product owner's decision when he should release the product or the increment to the customers. As we remember, we have to create a valuable, usable increment by the end of the sprint. However, it's product owner's decision when to release it. Sometimes taking into account the things that happen on the market, it's a better decision to release it less frequently than once in sprint, and sometimes it's a better decision to release it as soon as possible. So really much depends on many, many factors around our product development.
Thank you for that. All right, so a couple questions coming in here around Scrum Master. So any recommendations for Scrum Master who is starting with a new team who's not 100% agile yet and is using the best of both waterfall and agile?
Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I started as a Scrum Master, the key learning for me, the key teaching point was to observe the team and just look and understand what is the product about they're working on, what are the biggest impediments, how is the conversation flowing, how's the collaboration flowing, are they able to deliver an increment, do they have any dependencies around their product, and just observe and try to find those pinpoint moments when I can actually help as a junior Scrum Master and spark some more meaningful conversations how to inspect our process. So that's what I did. What did you, Joanna, did when you started as a junior Scrum Master?
Oh my gosh, quite a long time ago. If I came back to my history, I would say look at the principles, because I fully agree that you do not make a big changes overnight, because continuous learning, I would say, for me, it's a part of being agile. However, from principles point of view, every sprint is an opportunity to learn, to manage risks. Do you take those opportunities? Is there anything that you can help your team to work on that? So we create increments, at least working, useful, usable increments every sprint. So is your team able to do that? If not, what would be the first step that you can encourage your team to do? Other kind of questions. Scrum, one of Scrum principles is that we have a team of professionals. They are self-managing and cross-functional. So next coming questions. Is your team really cross-functional? Do they have all the skills in the team? It might be another great conversational point to help them look for those gaps, maybe to start some conversations with some leaders, decision makers in the organization, what you can do to really embrace this self-management and helping your team become cross-functional.
And also keep in mind that you have a master in your accountability. You're the master of Scrum. So might be an issue of sometimes discussing the reason behind each of the events, right? You're also there to educate and teach and understand why are they doing each of the events? What's the outcome? What's the output of each of the events of the sprint itself? So also it's good to focus on making sure everybody knows what they're working towards on. What's the sprint goal? What's this product goal? Does everybody understand that? Is there transparency in your work, in your environment. So all of those aspects come in hand. But keep in mind also that change doesn't happen overnight. As Joanna said, some of the improvements that you will see, some of the improvements you want to do will take a lot of time. So just make sure you do step-by-step little inspections, adaptations, and you have the feedback loop and you work on that, because Scrum is all about empiricism. It's all about learning. So make the next sprint better, to make our product better with each sprint. So what you can do as a Scrum Master to do that? That's more of an open question.
That's great. Thank you. All right. So there was another Scrum Master question where Megan asked, do you think a Scrum Master needs to have a technical background?
I love that question.
Me too.
And I was a part of that discussion. I can share my answer because I did not change my mind for a few years already. So I believe that this is not obligatory for a Scrum Master to have a strong technical or domain knowledge. However, for me, one of the principles is continuous learning applies to all of us, also to Scrum Master. So the best Scrum Masters that I had a huge pleasure and honor to work with, they were also learning about products. They were also interested in what our users are saying. So when you have your eyes and ears open, right? When you listen to conversations, when you help facilitate good things happening, and you learn, then you are becoming a better Scrum Master. So maybe you will not realize today that you have this knowledge, but most likely after a year or two, you may realize, oh my gosh, now I got more into those technical aspects. It does not mean that you start to code or build robots if your product is a robotic station, but you will learn, you will become a better person, a better Scrum team member, because you are, as a Scrum Master, a member of the Scrum team.
I'd say both of us are the perfect target for this question, since Joanna comes from technical background and I don't. I've actually finished pedagogy, so I'm certified in education. So totally different area. However, I agree 100% with Joanna. As long as you're learning about your product and your willingness to improve yourself grows over time, and you want to understand deeper what happens, you can become a better Scrum Master. And also, like a small side note, if you ask a technical Scrum Master, does a person needs to be a technical? Usually the technicals ones say yes, and the non-technicals say yes also, right? So they say you don't need to, and then you need to with a technical. So it really depends on your journey.
That's great. Thank you. That's great advice. And it's awesome to have two different background perspectives as well on that.
It's possible. It can be done. Look at us.
Woohoo! All right.
Different stories.
So this next question, another Scrum Master question, and then we can switch gears a little bit. So how do I, as a Scrum Master, start a good relationship with the product owner while setting the correct boundaries between roles? Now, this person did give a little bit of background, so I'll share that too. I am preparing to take over a new team, and I found out from the former Scrum Master that the team, that he and the PO mixed roles and responsibilities, and to be honest, I don't want to do that. I want to only do the Scrum Master job I am good at. I don't want to mix things. Any tips for that difficult conversation? So I guess it's two questions there. So the first one is, how do I start a good relationship with the product owner while setting the correct boundaries between roles?
I may start. I think I can recommend a general conversational tool to start. Oh, thank you, Melissa. Exactly. Working agreements. However, don't think about working agreements. They are just, how much do we work, who does what. You may add more things to your working agreements. For instance, how do we handle conflicts? How do we handle disagreements? What we can expect from each other, when it is okay to say no, and that if we agree on certain things, this is our agreement, let's do it. So this is the thing that in general, whenever there is a new team or the change in the team, it's good to either revisit or created from the scratch to make things transparent, to set the right expectations. Another piece of advice, what worked well for me, is to having an open conversation with product owner and asking what I can do to help you so that we will work great as a team. So I'm setting expectations that I'm here as a leader that serves from Scrum Master's point of view. And I want to listen to your problems. What is your biggest problem currently? How can I help you? How can I support you? At the same time, I think it's completely okay to tell that I'm not going to do the product management because I don't know about that. I'm Scrum expert. I want to take the best out of my knowledge to support you in that. If you feel that you are overwhelmed, maybe this is one of the hypotheses, I don't know, then you as a Scrum Master can help facilitate discussions, what we can do as a team. Maybe we have to raise an impediment and ask others for support, because let's be honest, product ownership, it's a lot of work.
Yes, I think it's really important to understand the why behind the situation. So when the product owner wants to, let's say, delegate things that are in his capacity or his accountability into the Scrum Master, so the question is why. He might be overwhelmed, or maybe there's not enough knowledge in him of the product ownership, or maybe, just maybe, had a bad example from somewhere. Maybe he's used to someone else doing that for him, and he never knew he could do it by himself. Well, in terms, let's say, this example product backlog management, it doesn't say that the product owner needs to rearrange the things in Jira from top to bottom or write user stories, write task. That's not product backlog management. That can be done by anybody from developers, right? So maybe there's an issue of going into too much details. Let's say in this example of product backlog management, maybe he doesn't want to do things that are in the capacity of the developers also. So I remember a situation that we had with a team like that. So what we did, we met on a retrospective, and each of us had a piece of paper divided into two things. One was the things I want to be accountable for at work, and the other one was what people expect of me. So each person wrote down what they wanted to be accountable for at work, and they passed it along to other people from the team. So each of us could write what we expect from this particular person or a role or accountability. It depends on the facilitation. And by the end of the retrospective, we had a whole list. And then we kind of had a facilitated discussion, but we came up with our understanding as a team from now on. Because even though you're just from this context, a new person joining the team, the whole dynamic changes. So it's good to revisit the agreement, the contract, the accountabilities, anything regarding to your scope of your role towards the whole team. That will work in my case.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I hope that was helpful. So
me too.
I'm sure it was. So the next couple of questions are kind of developer-focused questions, talking about some methods, tools, estimations, story points, user stories, those types of questions. So this question from Robert: what methods or tools do you use to make devs break big PBIs into smaller ones?
Are you looking for a specific name of the tools or just the general approach? It will really help you.
I would share some approaches, and then if there are tools that you recommend, that is fine too. But I would focus on the approach to facilitate this, I think. And Robert, if I'm off base, please let me know in the chat.
What I do when I work with developers, well, splitting the items is a whole Scrum team works. I wouldn't just include developers into that, because the product owner also knows what's the ultimate value at the end we want to deliver. So that's the one thing. But regarding the estimation, that's like total topic, so I'm not going to touch on that at the moment. So what I do is I talk a lot about value. So we kind of go around the value question. What's the smallest things that brings value to us that we can complete in this sprint, right? And what things that we complete on the previous sprint that met the definition of done, because we know increment needs to meet the definition of done that were suitable to bring to our customer, to our clients. As the name of the tools, we have the hamburger technique, right? For instance, when you slice a PBI into different parts of, like, say, a hamburger, and then you create one to bring at the end. That's one of the techniques and the ways I approach this.
So I really like the conversation about value. So I agree with Magda. This is a very powerful question. And I also asked that question for the whole Scrum team, so including product owner. What is the smallest possible value? Because it helps us narrow into the really, really small things that we can do during the sprint, and to find out how to split things. I use techniques that maybe your product owner already know, or you may teach them. So I love creating impact mapping. I love user story mapping. So the things that help you understand the journey, for instance, of your customer, creating personas. That was one of the great things that we use, because it helps us to tell different stories, then break down those stories into smaller things that our users are gonna do with our product. And then thanks to that, okay, what is this small path that we can do this sprint? What kind of value will it bring? And if you are talking in this conversation a lot about the user, then you basically can use user stories as a complementary tool. So you express your PBIs as a story, what that is going to happen, a value that you expect your users to achieve. And I think it plays really, really well together.
Also, from developers' perspective, I remember when I, as a young Scrum Master, I came back with this question to them. What can I do? What kind of techniques do you know to split stories into smaller ones, to split not only stories, but just PBIs? And they explained to me there's a technique called event storming. So I would go back to developers and ask about event storming. It's splitting the work from the architecture point of view, right? From the architecture of your system, if we're talking about software. So that might be another idea to look for.
I saw a question about persona. Thank you for that. And whenever we are speaking about some strange things for you, new to you, please give us quick feedback. So when it comes to persona, it's some kind of representative of your user, and it helps the team to jump into the shoes of this potential user. We express typically what we do is with my teams that we give a name. We give a picture, right? Visuals work, and we are writing down problems, some pain points, behaviors of that persona, and this helps us better connect our work to a particular user, and it focuses us our work and behavior towards helping this particular person that represents a group of our users. To help them solve the problem. It's like whenever you are writing something, you are in the front of your computer, you have a meeting, you are no longer talking about we just do product. Instead, you might think there are people somewhere, they are represented by Jessica, and what we do today is super important because we are trying to make Jessica's life better. So you may also use it as a tool for motivation, because it's not just a job, right? It's helping someone sitting somewhere in the world having some problems, and there are most likely more of such people. That's why we created persona to represent that group.
Target group, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. So this next question, so this person asked kind of a different question about estimations. So do estimations have both a QA and a development effort? They're indicating that their teams are not cross-functional. So what are your thoughts there? Maybe give some advice on building a cross-functional team as well.
Well, generally, for my idea, it's if we are estimating anything in our backlog, we estimate everything or nothing. If we just estimate some of the things that we do and others don't, then we don't have complete data. And if we don't have complete data, we cannot make conscious decisions or forecast our product development because we have incomplete data. So if you are estimating in your team, you estimate all the work and you estimate with all of your team, right? So to get a full understanding. It might be difficult at the beginning because I remember when I was starting teaching estimation, and the biggest voice was of the tester saying, we don't want to estimate because we don't understand the code. And we had a big conversation to which level they need to understand what's being done to know enough to estimate, right? So it took a while. It wasn't one session. It was a couple of sessions, couple of refinements, to be honest, to understand, to go into deep into our PBIs that we had until we get a shared understanding enough to estimate as a team. So that would be my point, to gather valid data.
So I also heard about problem with cross-functionality. So my question will be, so if your team is not cross-functional, how do you create product increment? Maybe this is a good starting point, right? Because if you do not have all needed skills and expertise, how you can make sure that you have this opportunity for learning, for gathering feedback every sprint. So that might be a change, huge change, a game changer actually in your process to do all the possible things to allow your team to make them become cross-functional team. And the second part, Magdalena shared the idea that if you estimate everything, because now it seems like you may miss some data, and how do you want to assess what is possible potentially and what is not? There is an alternative about that. Don't estimate, use the historical data. And this is pretty consistent with empiricism. So learning by doing, learning from history, making the best possible decisions for the future. So if you use information about, for instance, amount of PBIs you were able to achieve in previous sprints on average, for instance, or you will use in general so-called flow metrics. So Kanban guide for Scrum teams, this might be an inspiration for you. Sometimes you don't have to focus the conversation on the giving actual estimate. For instance, in story points, maybe it's better to ask different questions. What are the risks? What are unknown things? What are the ambiguities here? What is the worst thing that may happen? And have this conversation to assess how to prepare well during, for instance, backlog refinement for the upcoming sprints. And instead, look at the history, because the good news, what happened in the past, if you have transparency in your backlog, is truth. So you will make decisions in that case based on the data that was real. This is what happened. That was not a prediction of the future. It's about the history.
So I guess we got into more a bit of a conversation. What data can we use instead of velocity? Because usually story points lead to velocity at some point, burn down chart, which is what we call the vanity metric. That gives us some idea of velocity of the team, but gives us nothing about the product themselves. So as Joanna said, there are a lot of other metrics, another data we can gather. For instance, we can gather customer satisfaction index. We can try to measure cycle time, lead times, the quality of our work, let's say quality code coverage, that we can measure that. We can measure happiness index in our teams and then see where we go forward. But I guess we just kind of drifted with the conversation a bit from the questions.
No worries. Thank you for that. So this next question, I'm going to jump around a little bit more. There are lots of questions coming in. So if your question does not get answered, don't worry. I am going to share these questions with Joanna and Magda, and they will figure out a way to address them. So don't worry about that. I just ask you to be patient. So this next question So have either of you had experience working with Scrum teams that are not traditional software development based, but rather data science, where much effort and work is experimentational and could result in little to no added value at the conclusion of a given sprint? Focusing on delivering added value is difficult in this type of scenario.
What about changing a perspective a bit? Wonderful question. And now you triggered me, because personally, when I'm teaching in my classes about Scrum, I'm not telling that Scrum is a tool to help you with your delivery or product development. What I say instead, it's a tool to maximize learning, and it's a tool that helps us manage risks. So if you, in your case, I feel your pain, because I had this conversation with one of the leaders that he observed, like, you are doing a lot, right? And it was in robotics, by the way. So it was difficult, new algorithm, AI involved, right? AI is not a new thing, trust me. I studied that a long time ago. So new algorithm, new AI, hardware included. It was so many possibilities that something may go wrong. And it's good to have a conversation, what we actually did, what kind of risks did we notice, did we find out, and how did we manage them? So, for instance, during sprint review, we started talking about what was the value of learning process. And the product delivery, product development came up as the consequence of that learning and risk management. So I think when it comes to very R&D work, it's good to make such things transparent, have this conversation with stakeholders, and show what are doing when it comes to learning, when it comes to mitigating, managing risks. So that might be a changer that will help you facilitate better discussions.
That's great. Thank you. All right. So this question shifts to remote work. So I work with a remote team. It's a struggle to get the developers to talk during sprint retrospective and sprint planning. Any tips on how to build more momentum with this team? I have tried icebreakers, raised this concern during retrospectives, and no major progress. Help!
Sorry, I'm smiling. I feel your pain. I feel this pain. So usually I'm gonna go straight to come up some of the ideas and the solutions that worked for me. Maybe jump over then to Joanna to share her experience. So when I feel that people are disengaged, and doesn't mean it's usually online, could be offline. It happened before the online time, is because they don't see any value in the event. For instance, imagine we have a retrospective every sprint. We come up with some ideas, some actions, but we do not implement them. During some of the sprints, during like the time is passing, we see that whatever we discuss, nothing gets implemented throughout the work. There is inspection, there's no adaptation. So our work doesn't get any better. So we are not learning actually from what we did before. So this event loses value in itself because it doesn't have any output or outcome for us. So what helped with my teams was to ask them, what can we do together to make this event more valuable for you? What needs to happen, right? Is there a specific thing that needs to happen? What needs to change in this event to make sense? Because what I'm kind of feeling, but I'm just doing a hypothesis, that maybe there's kind of a zombie scrum. So you're doing the mechanics, you have all the events, you may have artifacts, you may have commitments, but however, some of the things are not working. So I'd say get back to the purpose. Why each of those events exist? How do they connect with each other? What happens after them? What happens with the output, right? So if you create a planning, and do you have a sprint goal? And do you ask and talk about the sprint goal during every daily? Do you inspect it as you go along, right? Do you really have the outcome out of the events? That would be my answer.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And thank you, Magda, for sharing that perspective. That might be one of the scenarios. And I can imagine that sometimes people simply do not like talking in a bigger group. If you ever facilitated a bigger meeting, most likely you realize that only a small group is talking when it's just asking questions, listening, right? That's why last year we published a new course at Scrum.org, and the keyword for you is facilitation. So I can recommend, if you look for resources at Scrum.org, there are plenty of good stuff. Keyword is facilitation, and there are techniques that you can use to maximize engagement. However, maybe they will not talk out loud in this bigger group, but if they create valuable post-its, their voice is there, and you can create outcomes from this meeting. Here you go. So I think it's also a matter of respect that simply some people do not want to talk in the front of the bigger group. So I would recommend, I would also recommend that direction. And I can also share something that happened to me recently. I had a group of 12 very good students, I have to say, because whenever they were doing some exercises, I've seen fantastic outcomes. But, you know, when I was talking to them, all the cameras were off, and it's terrible. It's a terrible thing for the trainer, because basically you are missing visual cues when you have this collaboration. So what I did, I took the advantage that the training was split over 4 days. And during the second day, one of the students called in earlier, and we started conversation. And I told her that, you know, it's such a pity that I don't see your face. And she said, okay, I will turn my camera off. And I said, hey, it's such a great thing that you are here. Why are you not turning your camera on? I told you openly that it may affect my work, and I'm here for you. So she said, well, I don't want to be the first one. And I told her, and at the same time, you can be leader, you can lead by example. She stayed with camera on, and till the end of the whole training, all the cameras were on, because this is what happened. I convinced her to stay with the camera on, and the others decided to change, you know, to have also these cameras on. So there are different leaders in your team, right?
So to paraphrase, find a change agent within your team, within your group, to someone on your side, and try to step by little make a change.
I have one more story. I will try to keep it short. There is, specifically for sprint retrospective, there is such a facilitation technique that we can call it a box technique. So you have a physical or virtual box. Basically, they are putting ideas they want to discuss in one place. And for every item, for every question, for every post-it, facilitator changes, it rotates. So you actually ask your team to be part of both participation and facilitation. Maybe that will help you create a bigger ownership during the meetings.
And also this, in regards to retrospective, just one more thing, there's a common misunderstanding that a Scrum Master should facilitate retrospective. Everybody is able to do that. Scrum Master just makes sure it's there, it happens, it has the effect it was supposed to have, everybody's engaged. However, you can do it on a rotating basis. So that's a great suggestion, Joanna. Thank you.
Great, thank you. This next question, so do you have any tips for creating sprint goals? At our project, the user stories feel like a long to-do list. Do you have simple examples?
Like an example of a good sprint goal?
Yes.
Users
how to create one.
We'll give you one example of a sprint goal. Users are able to log in via Facebook to our website. So it's a short, everybody knows what it's all about. It's written from the perspective of the user, and you know how to achieve it. So when looking at the sprint goal, you as a team are able to answer when will it be done. You know what the impact is. You know what's the preferred output that will come by the end of the sprint. You know what to look for. And also when creating a sprint backlog, it's understood to everybody, it's transparent, and you know which items of the PBIs can help you create and deliver the sprint goal. Keep in mind, not everything in the sprint backlog needs to adhere to the sprint goal. It could be 1 PBI, it could be 10 PBIs, doesn't really matter, it could be an area of PBIs, just the sprint goal gives you the goal. So that would be like a short, very short answer from my side.
And I have a longer one. So when someone asks me like, hey, could you help us create sprint goal? My typical answer is yes, but you know what? Could you please tell me what is your product goal? And maybe even earlier, could you tell me what is your product?
What you're doing it for?
Exactly. Who is your user? So my personal recommendation is to start with those, and I would add one more. So what is the product? Who is your user? What is your product goal? And what is currently, additional one, what is the currently maturity of your product? Maybe you have more products, maybe they are on different levels. Why I'm asking that? Because Scrum is not a universal tool to fix it all, right? It's not. If you have pure maintenance work, I used to have such work for some time. Scrum did not work perfectly. We felt that our work does not need those events. Instead, we focused on flow. So there might be some other tools that will help you find the best possible approach. And as a PST, Scrum is in our names. I will still say it's okay not to use Scrum. It may not be the best tool for you. However, what I observed is that one of the reasons why it's difficult to formulate a sprint goal, which should be a step, smaller step towards something bigger, something flexible, but as Magda showed us in our example, something that helps understand why we are doing that. What is the value? Okay, so it could be very easy to understand by everyone involved why the Scrum team is working on that. So I would start with asking you, your team, your product owner, those questions, because those questions might lead you to a quite interesting conclusions.
And also in Scrum, without the sprint goal, you pretty don't know what you're working towards for. You don't know what to inspect and adapt at the end. Your dailies become just Jira open, and you go task by task because there's nothing to focus on. So it's really important to have the shared understanding of the sprint goal as a step towards your product goal.
That's great advice. Thank you. So this next question from Craig is going to dig into your experiences a little bit. So can you discuss some of the best and most challenging interactions that you've had with leadership and stakeholders? Craig is looking for tips or specific techniques that you use with getting stakeholders to see the true impact of implementing Scrum and the Agile mindset.
That's a tough one.
It
The
is.
worst situation.
I can
start with some of the best and then go to the worst.
Yeah, I can start because I feel like from, stress and responsibility that I feel from point of view, every such conversation is challenging. So I can work, and I used to work with different leaders, including C-level executives. And what I feel, there are a few things that you have to be careful. If you are just using, we call it in Polish, round words. So we have to do it because it's good, because it's nice, because everyone is saying Scrum is great for complex problem. Well, this language, this conversation may end up with them, why you are telling me those things? Why? Do not distract me. I have plenty on my table, right? So good advice, good approach from my perspective is, what kind of problems do you have? What bothers you? What are the things that you think about when you start work in the morning? So if you want to have a good collaboration with leaders, present yourself as a partner. So for me, what really pays off was having transparent, respectful conversations about problems, helping leaders facilitate difficult discussions. One of the most difficult discussions that I had involved CEO, CTO, and very valuable developer, very experienced one. And there was a conflict. There was internal conflict, very tough situation. Everyone is red. Seems like they are very unhappy. And I help them using Scrum values, Scrum principles, to facilitate discussion into the right direction. So I try to paraphrase what they were saying. For instance, Magda, did you mean that you wanted to emphasize that you care about your work? Yes, this is what I wanted to say. You can imagine that it was a communicational problem. And at the same time, it helps us to find the right questions. Okay, what we want to achieve right now. What is your perspective? You ask one person, what is your perspective? So it helped. It helped. We were able to have this conversation till the very end. And although finally this engineer, this developer decided to leave the company, I felt that we ended up this relationship as good colleagues with a lot of respect. And this is what, in my view, Scrum is about values, about trust, about respect. Yeah, so I hope it helps, do not talk about wonderful ideas, maybe change perspective. How can I help you? What kind of problems you have? Use the best that you know, use the best your skills to help them, because then you build a partnership and they may ask you questions. So Magda, how can I help you? Do you have also some challenges? And here you go. You have now opening for a great conversations with important decision makers in the company.
So what works also for me is when talking to managers and leaders on CEO is asking, why did you want to adapt Agile or Scrum in the first place? What kind of problem were you trying to resolve? If your problem was, let's say, time, you want to improve time of deliverance or whatever you do to your customers, then we need to focus on that and build our goals, our product goals, our sprint goals around time. But you cannot tackle every problem that you have at once, because if everything is important, then nothing is important, right? So go back to the reason why did you want it in the first place. And what really helps also is one of the last lines in the Scrum guide. It's like, although you can use some of the elements of Scrum, if you want to have the full power of the inspection, adaptation, and transparency, you need to adopt whole of Scrum. You can have the events, you can have the artifacts and commitments, but if you resign from each of those, the value you wanted in the first place will not be provided. So if you want to have value, you need to adopt all of it and learn from it, right? It's empiricism. So what helps is that. And also the other part, let me adapt to that. I often ask, I'm going to be honest about budget, about money, because the company's reason to exist is to bring customers the products they need, they want. And the second one is to gain profit. So if you're choosing some kind of behavior, some kind of an action, how is this going to help profit your product, right? So if you wanted that, if your actions as a micromanager, let's say, if you want to micromanage your people, it takes a lot of your time, right? So if you pass some things along, you'll have more time to do more valuable things for the company and for the product than micromanage. And maybe if you see some behaviors like micromanagement or any other behavior that might disrupt the work of a Scrum team, also try to get into reason behind that. Maybe there's a small step you can do towards. There's this tool called Delegation Poker, Delegation Board, that very roughly, I'm going to go very quickly, explains there's more than one level of delegation. There are 7 levels of delegation. And moving from the first level, first of all, it's just telling someone, to the next level, it's a bit of a selling point, could be also a big step. So I'll also advise you to look at this tool. the delegation board and delegation poker as a tool to have a discussion with your manager, what things that he or she can give out.
Yeah, and again, we are touching the basis for one of the bases, our bedrock in Scrum, values supported by trust. So you can use delegation poker to talk about trust, because this is, without trust, I cannot imagine professional Scrum helping you flourish.
Thank you both for that. That was great. So this next question here, the leadership team believes the sprint review is taking too long. It is a 2-hour meeting and we demo and show progress and address what is next. So there are 5 teams who review, inspect, and adapt in these 2 hours. Feedback is stopped in literally 30 seconds. So people do not provide feedback. What can we do to improve?
So I'm going to try to answer a bit. However, I'm missing some context. Are those teams working on the same product or not? So that will be like a key question, because I'm going to assume like both ways. Let's say if those teams are working on the same product, they should not represent their own work each by each team, what they delivered, because they're working the same product. And the total of what they did, their increments, is the increment of the product. So they should present it. Present is not the perfect word. I'm going to change it. They should discuss it and gather feedback around one increment that they deliver, not one by one. In the other case, if those 5 teams are working on something totally different, then probably they have different stakeholders. They have different users, different products. So it doesn't really make sense for them to sit together in one meeting, because some of the people will just not be interested in that part. And also, other thing, like other side note, if stakeholders are saying your event is too long, it comes back to the question of value. Does it give value to them? What do they need to, what kind of information they're seeking for, and what kind of feedback are they gathering? Do your stakeholders actually know what this event is for? Right? Maybe there's kind of a conversation between the Scrum Master, product owner before the sprint review. What is important for them? When we do, I have like a couple of teams working together. One of the teams is building a very broad product. So depending on who uses which kind of service of this particular product, there's a different target audience. What we do with every sprint review, we provide an agenda saying what were the exact elements that we worked on during the last sprint. And only the people who are interested in that and can give you, not only interested, then give you valuable feedback, because sprint review is a feedback session pretty much. So you can inspect and adapt it towards your product goal. I also heard the word demo. Maybe if you're doing a demonstration instead of collaboration, they do not feel involved. They're just sitting and looking at your product. If it's a software product, let them click on it. Let them use it. Get them involved. Sorry, that was supposed to be a short answer. I was a bit longer. So, Joanna, to you.
You said a lot of good stuff already, Magda. Thank you. So one of the best sprint reviews I've seen, it was not a demo. Remember, in Scrum, we've never been talking about demo. It's actually, what do we want? Show working product, work together on increment, on inspecting increments. So the best sessions I've seen, CEO sit down in front of laptop and he was using the product. And I remember that people were amazed, looking at the potential user using the product, So that was a very, very good, and indeed, I would call it collaboration and feedback session. And remember, feedback is not only about talking. What I would even say, we have some research, some people claiming that talking to people is just one side of the coin. What is most important to understand how they actually use your product. That is a really strong feedback part of your sprint review. And I would ask, as Magda mentioned, what should be changed, dear stakeholders, so that you will get value out of it. And what I implemented in one of my situations, we had regular feedback service. Very short, however, we were constantly asking, feel free, feel invited to make change. We hear your feedback. So every sprint review, we did some small adjustment, and you may be shocked how big changes happened when you compare first sprint review in the year and the last one, right? Because small changes, regularly introduced, inspecting, just sometimes it means going back and forth, right? But those small changes made a huge, huge difference. So maybe you have also a product portfolio, and I wouldn't claim that it's not okay to have 2 hours working session. It might be a matter of how to do it well. So there are also some other techniques for sprint reviews when you want to do such thing. Maybe you can use some breakout rooms. You will have some, introduction, what's going to happen in this breakout room. We are working together on this part, in the other something else. What my teams also do, they send officially information to all stakeholders. Hey, we finished our planning. This is our sprint call. So sprint has just started, and the stakeholders are already informed in very straightforward way. This is our commitment. This is our sprint goal. So expect value when it comes to that particular goal.
Remember, when we say stakeholders, we mean also clients and users, because sometimes in the company, stakeholder is just a person within the company, some project managers, some directors who never actually use your product. Sprint review is also to gain feedback from your clients and users. When I worked in a medical company, we just took our laptops, went to the reception, and asked the patients that registered for visits to click on our new system. And the faces of the developers was like, don't click there, don't click there. Actually, you can see the patients going to click there because it's intuitive for him. That's not how our developers designed this. So it was the best feedback that we had, was just asking random patients in the medical facility to click on our product.
Some great discussion here. Thank you both so much. Unfortunately, we are coming up on our time already. This hour really flew by, and there's still a lot of open questions. So like I had mentioned, I am going to share these with Joanna and Magda, and I'll work with them on figuring out how we're going to address these open questions. We do run these sessions about once a month, so please keep an eye out for these sessions. Just a reminder, we do have learning paths and lots of free resources on the Scrum.org website. So please check those out. And all of our webinars are also listed on the website. And please stay connected with us and with Joanna and Magda. And Magda and Joanna, if you want to let the audience know how they can best connect with you, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, everyone, for participation. A lot of hard questions. I feel like this session can go on for a day or 2 days without an end. So the best way to reach me is via LinkedIn. So feel free just to invite me via LinkedIn. I see Joanna nodding, so probably that's also the best way to get in touch with us. And in terms of questions, we'll try to put them into a series of blog posts on Scrum.org, so they're not lost and you can access them forever and ever.
Woohoo! Sounds great. Thank you both so much for sharing your experiences today and helping our audience out with their questions. That was greatly appreciated. It's a very fun session, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. Scrum on.
I enjoyed it a lot, so it was a great experience. Thank you, ladies, and most importantly, thank you all for your time, because sometimes it's one of the most precious things that we have, our time, and you decided to spend this time today with us. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.